Hey guys, it's Kendra.
And this is Jessica, and you're listening to
Lucid Lab.
This episode is going to be a little bit different, as you could tell by the title. So thank you for clicking on it, and thank you for listening.
Yes, it's important.
So I'm taking the lead on this one, and we're going to get right into it because it's a serious conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Congo is experiencing one of the most complex humanitarian crises in the world. But if you were like us and you didn't know anything about it, then to you, almost no one is talking about it. And it's shocking. And even if you did know, still almost no one is talking about it. Because let's be real, a lot of it has to do with racism.
Yeah.
We're not going to go down that tangent on this episode, but there is a reason why people know and do not push for change. Not only because of skin color, but because speaking up for the people of Congo is in direct conflict with so many comforts you value in your life. Because maybe that phone means more to you. Maybe that car means more to you. Maybe that laptop means more to you. We all have these things too. This is a worldwide issue. But not talking about it does not help create solutions. Solutions that do not result in genocide, slavery, murder, rape, displacement, and neglect of the people of Congo.
We can have those things without all of these horrible atrocities that are going on.
Absolutely. It seems like an impossible task. What does not buying the next iPhone solve? Well, we hope to put things into perspective in this episode. We want to educate you in our limited ways. We are not experts. I'm not. For a lot of us, we just recently learned about all of this, even though it has been going on forever. But now that we know, we have a responsibility to pay attention. On social media, we all see, comment, and engage with posts about Palestine. We had an episode about this. We're very passionate about that. But in the comments, we also see people screaming, "Free Congo."
Right.
And maybe you saw that for the first time and your heart stopped because there's so much going on in this world that we didn't know about. I can't tell you how many comments I've seen people genuinely asking, what is going on in Congo?
Right. Both of us were when we first saw it.
What's happening in Congo? So many of us didn't know because they don't want us to know. Our countries do not want us to know because everyone is involved. Everyone is responsible. So we took it upon ourselves to find out what is going on in Congo. And we want to enlighten you. So we hope you stay and have a little history lesson with us because, again, this is about human rights. And I am so sick and tired of failing our fellow human beings around the world. It is us against the elite, the big companies, the corporations, the heartless assholes who could care less about human life. We need to stick together, regardless of what country we reside in. Do not let them divide us. So today, open your hearts and listen. This is about your brothers and sisters. So a few facts about the Democratic Republic of Congo, or the DRC. It is the second largest country in Africa and the 11th largest in the world, covering an area of about 2.3 million square kilometers in Central Africa. For size comparison, that's about a quarter of the United States or 3 Texas states put together. So it's quite large.
3 times Texas is a lot.
Yes.
I know how long it takes to drive across just one Texas.
Yes. So this is a very large area. The country is extremely rich in natural resources. It has a significant portion of the Congo Basin rainforest, which is the world's second largest rainforest after the Amazon.
Okay. Aren't gorillas in Congo?
Yes.
Yes.
As of 2024, depending on the source you're getting information from, there are anywhere from 102 to over 115 million people living in the DRC.
So that's like a third of the U.S. That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people in one area. It's one of the most populous countries in Africa. It's home to over 200 ethnic groups, and it is the most populous Francophone country in the world. So French-speaking people.
I was like, I don't know that word at first.
As with most places in the world, colonization was the start of chaos for native inhabitants.
I hate this history in almost every part of the world.
I know. The Belgian colonization of Congo began in the late 19th century under King Leopold II, who initially ruled it as his private property.
Okay, Leopold.
He called it the Congo Free State from 1885 to 1908. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of how we got to where we are today as far as who is in power. So it's just a very brief history. I did not go into absolute detail of this, but just imagine the chaos that happens during these power struggles. It's been going on for a very long time. During King Leopold II's rule, millions of Congolese died due to forced labor, disease, and brutal treatment in rubber production.
Okay.
In 1908, due to international pressure over atrocities, the Congo Free State became the Belgian Congo, or colony of Belgium. Even after 1908, the Belgian state continued to exploit Congo's natural resources. Belgium extracted enormous wealth from Congo, particularly in minerals like copper, cobalt, and uranium, but there was minimal investment in Congo's development until very late in the colonial period. Belgium imposed a paternalistic system treating Congolese as children to be civilized.
Oh.
Education was limited, with few Congolese receiving higher education before its independence. Belgium's sudden withdrawal in 1960 left Congo unprepared for self-governance, contributing to immediate post-independence instability. The lack of educated Congolese elites due to colonial policies made transition to self-rule very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
The hasty decolonization process contributed not only to political instability, but civil wars and ongoing conflicts in eastern Congo to this day. Patrice Lumumba became the country's first democratically elected prime minister. Another man, Mobutu Sese Seko, was next to rule. He was initially a journalist and friend of Lumumba. He became Secretary of State for National Defense and later Army Chief of Staff. He then collaborated with the CIA and played a role in Lumumba's downfall. On November 24th, 1965, Mobutu seized power in a coup d'etat. He established a one-party system and declared himself head of state. In 1971, he renamed the country Zaire.
Okay.
It was a long dictatorship. It lasted until 1997, so over 30 years.
Okay.
His regime was characterized by widespread corruption and personal enrichment. He amassed a vast personal fortune, estimated between $4 and $15 billion.
Oh my God. Exploiting his own countrymen.
Absolutely. But despite vast natural resources, Zaire's economy deteriorated under his rule. The Rwandan genocide of 1994, which we all know about, and that's really in America thanks to Hollywood.
Yeah, Hotel Rwanda was, I guess, the movie that really brought it to light.
Yeah, I didn't know about it otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
The genocide had a significant spillover effect into the Democratic Republic of Congo, leading to regional tensions and conflicts that continue to impact the area today. Approximately 1.5 to 2 million Hutu refugees fled to eastern Zaire.
Okay.
This massive influx destabilized the region and created humanitarian challenges. The refugee camps in eastern DRC became bases for Hutu militias, including Interahamwe and ex-Rwandan army members who launched attacks into Rwanda. In 1996, Rwanda, along with Uganda, supported a rebellion led by Laurent Kabila against Mobutu's regime. Kabila was the leader of the Alliance of Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Congo Zaire, or AFDL. It was a coalition of opposition groups. This was partly motivated by Rwanda's desire to dismantle the Hutu militant bases in eastern Zaire. This time was known as the First Congo War.
Okay.
As rebel forces approached Mobutu, he fled the country on May 16, 1997, and he died in exile in Morocco just a few months later. So Kabila became president again, self-declared, and renamed the country the Democratic Republic of Congo. His ascension, or claim to power, was initially met with enthusiasm, but challenges quickly emerged. He suspended the transitional constitution and dissolved parliament. He based his authority on AFDL statutes rather than constitutional processes. And because of that, his rule was short-lived.
So he renamed it Democratic Republic of Congo, but it doesn't sound like there was any kind of democratic, it's not like true democracy.
I do not think so. The Second Congo War, or what is often called Africa's World War, started just a year later as relations between Kabila and his former allies, Rwanda and Uganda, deteriorated. Rwanda and Uganda invaded DRC, ostensibly to fight Hutu militias, but also to gain control over mineral-rich areas. In January of 2001, Kabila was assassinated by his child soldiers, and his son, Joseph Kabila, took power.
Okay.
As you can tell, it's just a lot of chaos over a few years' time. Although many hoped the changes would bring in some stability and democracy, instead it ushered in a new era of conflict and uncertainty.
Wow, these poor people living there, they're just trying to live their lives.
Yes. Joseph Kabila held power in the DRC for just over 18 years until Felix Tshisekedi was elected. So he is the current president.
So they have elections
now.
Okay.
Before it was taken, either violently or not.
Yeah.
Right. Kabila's second and final constitutional term ended in December of 2016, but he delayed elections for 2 years, citing logistical and financial obstacles.
Okay.
Widespread protests and international pressure forced Kabila to agree to elections, which were finally scheduled for December 23rd, 2018, although there was a brief delay and it was actually held on December 30th. Kabila did not run, but supported Emmanuel Ramazani Shadary as his successor. Felix Tshisekedi was declared winner with 38.57% of the vote. Martin Fayulu, another opposition candidate, came in second with 34.8%. Shadary, Kabila's chosen successor, came in third with 23%. The results contradicted pre-election polls, which all showed that Fayulu was in the lead.
Okay. We know how that goes in America. The polls are always wrong or things get fixed. We know that happens too.
Yeah. Fayulu and others accused Tshisekedi and Kabila of making a deal to secure Tshisekedi's victory in exchange for protecting Kabila's interests. He challenged the results in the Constitutional Court, but the court dismissed the case and upheld Tshisekedi's victory. And he was sworn in as the 5th president of the DRC on January 24th, 2019, which marked the, so they say, first peaceful transfer of power in the country's history.
Okay.
Just meaning he was supposedly elected compared to someone seizing power through war. Despite the transition, Kabila's coalition maintained control of the legislature and most provincial governments, which allowed Kabila to retain significant influence in Congolese politics even after leaving the presidency.
Oh, convenient. We know how that goes.
Yes, we do. Regardless, Tshisekedi's government in the DRC faces several significant challenges, particularly related to ongoing conflicts in the eastern part of the country.
So he's still president today?
Yes.
So how long are their terms?
I believe it's 5 years, but he was just sworn in again.
Okay.
Whether people wanted that or not, who knows?
Maybe not. So
I would
he
say
just
maybe
started not. Again. He was 2019, so that means he just started again in January. So he's got another 5 years. So he's there until 2029 or until God knows what.
Well, I guess we'll see. But today, one of the biggest issues is the resurgence of the M23 rebel group. Have you heard of M23?
I've seen it in some of the videos.
So M23 emerged as a splinter group from former CNDP fighters. CNDP stands for National Congress for the Defense of the People. The CNDP was a rebel group that fought against the DRC government between 2006 and 2009.
Okay.
On March 23rd, 2009, the CNDP signed a peace treaty with the DRC government, agreeing to become a political party in exchange for the release of its imprisoned members.
Okay.
As part of this agreement, CNDP fighters were to be integrated into the Congolese National Army. However, some former CNDP members felt that the government did not fully implement the terms of the March 23rd peace treaty. I'm not sure of those exact details, but in April 2012, nearly 300 soldiers, most of them former CNDP members, mutinied against the DRC government, forming a new rebel group called the March 23rd Movement, or M23.
Okay.
Taking their name from that date, M23 claimed to be fighting due to the government's failure to fully implement this deal and to protect the interest of Congolese Tutsi or other Kinyarwanda-speaking minorities. The new rebellion was in many ways a continuation of the CNDP's aims and grievances.
Okay.
The group is widely believed to receive significant support from Rwanda, although Rwanda denies these allegations.
And Rwanda is run by the Tutsis, so that makes sense.
Yes. M23 has demonstrated considerable military strength, at times operating more like a conventional army than a typical rebel group.
And why would Rwanda want this rebel group in there? Is it still just because of
its
the
resources?
Ethnic? Okay, so they're just fighting over money.
That's what a lot of this comes down to. You know, Palestine. What's going on in Palestine? They want that land. It's been about the land.
Yeah.
In 2012, M23 briefly captured Goma, the capital of North Kivu province. And after being defeated in 2013, M23 kind of lay dormant and they just resurfaced in late 2021.
Okay.
Since 2021, M23 has launched new offensives, capturing significant territory in North Kivu. The group has been accused of numerous human rights violations, including killings, rapes, and forced recruitment of civilians, including children. M23's activities have displaced hundreds of thousands of people, with people living in desperate conditions in makeshift camps, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis in the eastern DRC. M23's involvement has heightened tensions between DRC and Rwanda, with DRC accusing Rwanda of supporting the rebels. Like we said, it makes sense. But again, Rwanda denies this, which is an issue. It's complicated regional diplomacy and peace efforts. And now Rwanda is threatening to go to war with the DRC if they don't stop accusing them of supporting the rebels.
Okay. But we know that they might secretly really be supporting them.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of evidence to it.
Yeah. How else do they have the money to arm themselves?
It reminds me a lot of similar issues going on in Palestine with Israel.
Yeah.
And the genocide and every, things being used against, this happened to us. So now support us. But I'm like, but now you're doing really bad things. So come on.
Yeah. That's like Rwanda had their own thing and now they're supporting. And the same thing happened in the Middle East, even taking Israel out. If you look at like Iran and Iraq and Saudi Arabia and all those things, there was a lot of that going on that the U.S. got in there and fucked up. So these things are so complicated.
They are, because then our countries come in and be like, ooh, but we want those resources. So we're going to support this group.
Mm-hmm. And that group may be doing horrible things and we're giving them funding. And that's probably what Rwanda is doing right now. They're funding this group because it's in their best interest to get into DRC and get resources or whatever.
So the hard part about this is M23 is not the only one. They're just the most well known. There are over 120 armed groups active in Eastern DRC.
So it's just a bunch of rival gangs.
Yes.
Competing.
All of these groups perpetuate violence and control territory. That's what they're there to do. There are widespread reports of war crimes, these killings, rapes, forced recruitment of the civilians, like I mentioned. The conflict has increasingly appealed to ethnic loyalties, putting civilians at heightened risk. The Congolese army has struggled to effectively counter rebel advances and have been criticized for collaborating with certain armed groups to fight others, which legitimizes their criminal activities.
Right.
And the UN peacekeeping mission that's there, MONUSCO, has also faced criticism for its inability to protect civilians effectively. So I want to talk about MONUSCO for a second because it plays a big part there. MONUSCO has been present in the DRC for nearly 20 years.
Okay.
Yet violence and insecurity persists, especially in these eastern regions. As the number of armed groups has increased despite MONUSCO's presence, it has led to a perception that the mission has failed in its primary objective of restoring peace. Many local communities feel that MONUSCO has not effectively protected them from armed groups and violence. Recent protests against MONUSCO have been met with violence, resulting in injuries and deaths, further angering the population. Despite being one of the UN's most expensive and extensive peacekeeping missions, many Congolese do not see any tangible improvements in their daily lives.
Oh, that's disappointing.
And it's contributed to a hostile environment for MONUSCO in parts of DRC, with some residents and officials calling for the mission's complete withdrawal. So President Tshisekedi has pushed for the complete withdrawal of the UN mission by the end of 2024.
Okay.
But not all Congolese are actually ready to see them go, and they fear for their safety even more with them gone.
Yeah.
The Congolese government blames MONUSCO for not being aggressive enough in battling M23 and other rebel groups, but MONUSCO's role was always intended to be complementary to that of the Congolese armed forces, not the primary fighting force. MONUSCO are peacekeepers, not warfighters. And that's their argument. Putting the blame on MONUSCO distracts from an attempt to absolve the government of its cardinal responsibility to protect its own citizens. It's highly unlikely that the Congolese military on its own is up to the task. So there's a lot of transition that still is going to happen in a already war-torn country that does not receive the help that it needs.
Right.
Many believe that the true intention behind the government's push to eject MONUSCO has less to do with addressing the DRC's security challenges and more to do with reducing UN oversight of the increasingly exploitative actions of the Congolese security forces. So the future without MONUSCO is unknown, and people have the right to be frustrated and scared. So there seems to be both a criticism of the group by the people who live there, but also people who want them to stay, because without them, there isn't a structure yet.
It could be full
There's
chaos.
No safety.
Yeah, they feel like they're frustrated because they're not doing enough, but then they're like, but we don't want you completely gone because they must be doing something.
Because there's nothing to replace it right now.
Mm-hmm. And then they all just devolve into chaos with all these different groups.
And it already is, you know. It's very complicated. We've obviously touched on it, but why is Congo such a focus for so many rebel groups?
Mm-hmm.
It's because of the exploitation of natural resources. The DRC is the richest country in the world with some of the poorest people in the world. It's abundant in natural resources and minerals. A lot of these are conflict minerals. You can literally dig a couple inches into the ground below your feet and find these minerals. Yeah. The DRC has some of the highest grade copper reserves globally, with some mines estimated to contain above 3%, which is significantly higher than the global average. It is the world's largest cobalt producer, accounting for nearly 68% of global production. It has substantial untapped gold reserves. It is the fourth largest producer of industrial diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
It has globally significant lithium deposits, also tin, tungsten, and manganese, which are all used in steel. Of course, timber with its vast forest reserves, petroleum reserves for oil and gas, and coltan. 60 to 80% of global reserves are found in North and South Kivu provinces, and part of the reason East Congo is so heavily sought after and fought over. But coltan, you know, that's our cell phones. That's our laptops.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that this will not spill into other areas of Congo as this continues. In fact, it's expected, which is very scary. There are some parts of the Congo that people aren't experiencing all of this, but
it's coming
not forever.
Their way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Overall, a lot of companies and countries want a peace and are fighting to gain control of the land despite millions of people who live there. Many of these resources, particularly gold, diamonds, coltan, tin, tungsten, have been associated with conflicts and human rights abuses in the DRC. So some of these companies, you know, we know, Apple, Google, Dell, Microsoft, Tesla, all have been cited in relation to cobalt sourcing from the DRC. But let's be clear, there are countless companies that use the minerals from the DRC and participate in the ongoing issues. They use cobalt in rechargeable lithium-ion batteries for electronic devices and electric cars.
Yeah.
The jewelry industry needs those diamonds. Companies producing cell phones and other electronic devices use coltan. Companies involved in producing solar panels and wind turbines use minerals from the DRC.
This is just so frustrating because we feel like we're doing something better. We're getting renewable. Like I have a hybrid car. Drew has solar panels on his house because we think we're doing something good, and we're just moving it from pollution and exploiting oil and gas and all of that to someone else. There's just like no good
always at
answer
the expense of
somebody.
This
just sucks.
I know. Several Canadian junior mining companies have been involved in copper, cobalt, and diamond mining in the DRC. Many companies claim to be or are working on initiatives to improve sustainability and ethical standards of their supply chains. But, you know, I'll believe it when I see it. Because many of these companies, of course, not claiming actual responsibility, are responsible for over the 120 armed groups trying to claim their share. Someone's paying all of these separate groups to fight and pillage.
Yes. And it's benefiting them that these groups continue to fight.
Yep.
Because then there's not one person that can set the price and say, no, you're not going to exploit the Congo. You're going to pay this price or whatever. This is good for the companies that there's all this turmoil because they're stealing, literally stealing stuff.
Yes. China is the biggest exporter of DRC minerals, absorbing about 41% of the country's exports. Chinese companies are heavily involved in mining operations, particularly for copper and cobalt.
But those Chinese companies are just making the stuff that goes into our American companies' goods.
They still want to control it all, though. Okay. They want the control. Of course, we have Canada, the U.S., and European countries as well. Belgium still has their ties in the mining sector with the DRC. South Africa is a major trading partner with mining interests. Literally almost every country seems to be involved. Everybody wants a cut here.
Yeah.
One of the biggest companies I found, I knew nothing about them before, that's involved with the mining operations is a company called Glencore.
Okay.
Glencore has faced multiple investigations and legal issues related to its activities and corruption in the DRC. Many countries have gone after them. They were accused of paying out over $100 million in bribes to maintain control. They have reached settlements in the billions to other countries for their profit-driven bribery.
Where are they based out of?
Switzerland.
Okay, where some of the richest people in the world live. That makes sense.
So an evil company, and now they have a evil man working for them to secure mining permits, Dan Gertler, who himself has been accused of high-level corruption. He was the middleman between Kabila and interested parties. He has been sanctioned by the U.S. for corrupt practices in the DRC. He has lost over $1.3 billion for the DRC between 2010 and 2012 alone. Gertler's partnership with Glencore is like, these are scary fucking people.
These are the shadow people.
He's
that
a bad,
you don't hear
bad
about
man.
Much. Yeah.
And they're a bad, bad company. And this is who has the majority power over mining there at the current moment. If you want to look into that more, please do. We're not trying to cover every little piece. We wanted to give you this overview of how corrupt everything is there because it is so complex, but it's the people who are suffering.
Yeah, always.
And we need to shed light on that because it's not until enough people are talking about it that things start to happen. And for decades, they've kept it from us.
Yeah, nobody knew until Palestine happened. And then everyone's like, by the way, you think this is horrible. Look at what has been happening here forever and ever and ever.
Yes. Because this is about human rights. So I want to tell some of their stories and humanize this part of the world that has been ignored for far too long. But thanks to social media, so many of us are waking up to the humanitarian crises all over the world. And we may be late, too many years late, but we want to be a voice.
Yes.
Slavery and forced labor are significant issues in the DRC. I don't have current figures, but in 2021, on any given day, there were 407,000 people living in modern slavery.
Oh my God.
With roughly 255,000 of those digging cobalt.
Oh my God.
And of that, 40,000 were children, some as young as 6 years old. That's 2021. There's likely much more today.
Yeah, because our cell phone industry and batteries and all that just continues to grow. So they need more. And they're just going to keep exploiting these poor people and their children.
Various forms of slavery have been identified in mining areas, including forced labor, debt bondage, peonage, sex slavery, forced marriage, and the enslavement of children. Women and girls are often subjected to sexual exploitation in mining areas, with some reports indicating sexual workers as young as 12 years old. And this is just on top of everything else.
Right.
As rebel groups moved into these areas, as of last year, at least 7.3 million Congolese have been internally displaced in the DRC. Some sources say up to 8 million. With 1 million of them newly displaced since the beginning of last year.
Wow.
And 400,000 of those newly displaced in North Kivu since the start of this year.
So they're just pushing them out of their villages because they want to dig or whatever where they
more
reside.
Control.
Yeah.
But nobody is receiving help.
So they're just pushed out and nowhere to go.
Nowhere to go. These are homes that they can't return to.
Because they become mining camps.
And controlled by very, very bad people.
Right.
In less than 20 years since the start of the Congo Wars, over 6 million people have died and over 400,000 women are raped each year in the DRC.
Oh my God.
Which is the highest rate of sexual violence in the world. And something to keep in mind with all of this, 46% of the DRC's population is under the age of 14.
Oh my God. Very similar to Gaza.
Yes. And with all of this, there are around 25 million people who need humanitarian support right now.
Yeah.
And this isn't talked about.
And nobody's there to pick them up.
Those forced to mine or those who have no other option but to mine. I don't even know how to say it. Like those who are lucky enough to be paid cents on a dollar to do it face extreme physical and health risks.
Yeah.
Exposure to toxic substances like mercury, silica, arsenic, lead, methane, sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxide, carbon monoxide, and cyanide.
Oh my God.
Cobalt exposure causes cancer, respiratory diseases, and heart problems.
So they're forced to mine. They're paid maybe a very, very meager salary, and then they die from health issues.
Yes. Overworking and exposure causes musculoskeletal disorders. People who are already suffering from malnutrition and are small, like especially women and young people, they have to lift these sacks of cobalt.
Oh my God, yeah.
Which is around 110 pounds. It's like not
heavier than they are.
Yes, and this is leaving every day. You know, there's helicopters and planes coming to collect this every day. Exposure to the dust and the grit in the air around the mines impacts everyone's lung health. Miners are regularly coughing with lung difficulties. They don't have access to basic protective gear. For women, we have birth defects and malformations due to the toxins, and there's frequent miscarriages. Mm-hmm. They have gynecological and reproductive health issues, not to mention all these toxins contaminate their water sources and any crops if they have them, which many do not. It's a very fertile soil, but not a lot of people can do this anymore because they're pushed out and they don't want to be far. Like people are stopping planting and growing because it's too dangerous. Like you can't even walk that far away from your camp or you're going to be killed or you're going to be raped. It's just not safe.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have all the physical risks too, not just these health risks. There's accidents. A lot of these mines are improperly constructed, very dangerous. You can suffocate, you can drown. You get cuts, broken bones, things get infected. Mm-hmm. Falls are very common. And there's also the risk of landslides and tunnels collapsing.
Right.
I just watched a video the other day with this landslide, like actively covering this hole where people were in that mine.
Oh my God.
It was a small hole, but people were in there. And you just watched person after person jumping out of this hole. There must have been 30 of them and everybody just screaming to try and get them out.
Right.
Because it was about to get closed up. And it was really hard to watch because you know the condition that these people are living in and they're being forced to do this. But just the cheering of every man that made it out of that hole, because how many don't?
Right. And it's probably a weekly occurrence, something like that, maybe daily.
So scary. And that's just the mines.
Right.
Displacement camps are overcrowded. There are over 600,000 people in Goma alone. There's no infrastructure.
They're just living in like full on cardboard from what I saw in the one documentary. Yeah.
Makeshift shelters in very small places. When it rains, it becomes very muddy. And when you look at photos and videos, the tiny spaces in between those tents, they're just mounds of mud. Mm-hmm. So when they dry up too, it's just very uneven ground, very difficult to just get around. Food distribution is inadequate.
Yeah.
When people venture out to try and find food, the forest isn't safe. Like I said, they could be murdered, raped, abducted. People are hungry. They're starving. They have very limited access to drinking water and sanitation.
Wow.
Lack of clean water and sanitation contributes to the spread of diseases like cholera. Malaria is still a major health problem there.
Right.
They have repeated outbreaks of Ebola, measles, HIV/AIDS, polio, typhoid, tuberculosis. COVID caused a major disruption in health services. Due to the conflict, health facilities have been destroyed. Mm-hmm. Aid workers can't reach these places. And even when they can, they only have so many resources.
Right.
It's very dangerous.
And they have to worry about their own safety trying to get through those same forests to help those people.
Exactly. But one of the biggest issues, despite everything that we just said, is the physical and sexual violence of women and children. Rape has been used as a war tactic of these rebel groups and sometimes even the government forces since the beginning. They take over villages by beating and sometimes murdering the men, raping the women, sometimes the children, and destroying the homes. Some are abducted and put into holes in the ground, children and women alike. In these holes, they stay for any man to jump down and assault them whenever they please, only to be released when their body is completely used up, deformed, or they're killed.
Right.
Rape is used as a tool to terrorize and control, to destroy community cohesion. Raping the women is a tactic because men in the DRC often reject or abandon their wives if they've been raped.
That's so sad.
And not just by their husbands. Rape victims often face significant stigma and rejection from their families and communities. Some men leave for fear of contracting a disease, which unfortunately is prevalent.
Right.
A lot of these women are gang raped.
Oh my God.
Men don't want to stay with women who have experienced this.
It's so fucked up. Like these women are,
I know.
I can't.
And especially if she becomes pregnant as a result of the rape.
Right.
And the rapes are very violent. Some women are murdered afterwards, and if they aren't, many have injuries that last a lifetime.
Yeah.
If they survive, women can develop fistulas as the result of this violent rape. And if you don't know what that is, it's just when two parts of your body connect that shouldn't be connected. I think you know where we're going with that.
Yes.
Women with this type of traumatic injury can no longer control their bodily
Oh my God.
fluids and requires surgical intervention, which women don't have access to.
Right. There's no health workers there.
And they're not just raped by men, but by objects. A lot of these objects are what cause some of
The
these
pain,
injuries. Yeah. It's unbearable to think of. The pain, the shame, the fear that these women go through. And not just women, children too. And I have a really hard time bringing up the children, but this happens to the children too.
Female children. Or both.
Little boys too.
Oh my God.
But raping women breaks up
families,
homes.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks up families. It leaves the women and the children vulnerable. So they have no choice but to flee.
Right.
Leaving that village free for the rebel groups to take over.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one step closer for them controlling the land, fighting off the other rebel groups. So there are millions in displacement camps.
And these poor women and children have been rejected by their families for something that they can't control.
It's absolutely horrible.
It's just the objectification of women. Like we are there to serve a purpose for those men. And then as soon as we're tainted in any way, they're like, oh, you're out. Like that just really fucks with me. Just dehumanization of women is a problem as a whole. And then you see it here and it's just it's so fucking heartbreaking. And I watched one of the documentaries you recommended and I saw that and I couldn't get through that without crying. It's just...
I know. It's difficult because I don't want to paint Congolese men all in a bad light. There are countless men who do fight on the side of women and children. And they're struggling just as much. You know, they're tortured. They're being murdered. The damage they suffered just mentally and emotionally for not being able to protect their families. Everything about it is survival, right? It's collectively hell on earth there.
Yeah.
For these people. You have the lack of just basic necessities. And then you live with this daily fear. I don't know how any of them just handle that. But this has been going on for so long. Boys who are born, who will they become? And I think that's a question a lot of times. You know, they witnessed murder. Maybe they witnessed their mothers, their sisters, their aunts being raped.
Right.
Many of them end up not respecting human life when they grow up.
Yeah. And
respecting women. And they're recruited young.
I was going to say they're forced recruited. It's not even a choice. It's either you join these forces and start doing it yourself or you die.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these boys are doing things they don't necessarily want to be doing. I feel like they have to as well, even in the military groups or whatever.
Becomes what they do. I mean, it's a scary place for a child to be because how are you supposed to be okay after witnessing any of this? You know, what's going to survive? Is it going to be the good in you or the bad in you?
It's going to be the bad, unfortunately, I think.
And the women who survive these traumatic sexual assaults, they have this healing journey that most of us would never be able to fathom.
Yes.
They have to still care for their own children afterwards, or maybe bear a child that came out of this situation and love that child and raise that child.
And they're having physical I'm thinking
issues,
about even having a baby after the trauma that has happened to their
Yes.
bodies. I can't fathom it.
Then you have to worry about your child surviving to adulthood.
Right.
And if they do survive, if you had a boy, will they grow up to join the men who do this? Mm-hmm. If you have a girl, is she going to be raped and murdered?
Yes.
It's a terrifying reality. It's so not okay that we have just sat back and let all this happen because of resources.
Because we want new iPhones and new cars and none of us know this.
That's just it. We didn't need iPhones. They made them and said, hey, you need iPhones.
We don't need one every year.
Exactly. You don't. You do not.
But they make them where that Apple got sued because they were making phones where they would become obsolete every 2 years. So you'd have to buy them.
I know.
They're doing this to us. We could have bought the first generation of iPhone and it would still be working today.
If they make it this way. Yep.
So that's
why they say old things used to last forever. And now all new things.
It's all about making money. Yes.
Yep.
And we live in a society where if you don't have a smartphone, you can't even have a job.
I know.
Nowadays. Even working at fast food, you need the app to be able to get your schedule and get your...
It's true.
There's so much to it.
It's so complicated. But back to the women. I watched this documentary on Netflix called City of Joy. This is the one I watched. Kendra watched as well.
It's a really hard watch, but it also has a lot of inspirational pieces to it too.
Yes.
Really good.
Go watch it. I am assigning it as homework.
Yes.
Go watch that. Hear about what these women have been through. It's gut-wrenching, but City of Joy, it's like a sparkle.
It's like the one little tiny glimmer of hope for these tortured women and children.
City of Joy was founded by activist Christine Schuler-DeSchrijver, Dr. Dennis Mukwege, and playwright activist Eve Ensler to fight for Congolese women's rights. Christine is a Congolese woman who had privileges most there did not. Growing up, her father was from a very rich Belgian family, although he did denounce that. He hated his colonialist history and revolted. So she could have left. She could have sought safety in another country.
Right.
After people she loved were killed and witnessing babies who were raped, one who died in her arms in a hospital, her purpose was just cemented. She needed to help. City of Joy is a transformational leadership community for women, survivors of sexual violence, women who attend work on healing from the trauma through therapy and life skills programming. They conquer their shame, fear, and history through love and community so that they can go back into the world and claim their place. They focus on transforming their pain into power. It's incredibly powerful. You watch these women just flourish in this program. Some feeling called to stay and help with others and do the same. You will hear their personal stories of rape, and it's difficult to hear. How their villages were taken over. It's hard to process. How any human being goes through this. And I want to tell their stories. I don't have all the time in the world to do that, but I need to tell you some of them because this needs to be real for you listening. You need to hear the atrocities. One woman, rebels broke into her home, tied up her aunt, stabbed her aunt in the neck, and collected her blood as she bled out. They then took her blood and threw it all over the house, and then she was raped by 6 men. She was unable to walk before thankfully taken to a hospital where she received the help that she needed to. But many women don't have this opportunity. They do not get to a hospital. Another woman, Rosso, explained how she made it to the city. She was a nun in her village. Rebels burned the nuns alive. She saw pregnant women laid out on the ground, their bellies cut open and their babies outside of their bodies, also dead. They shot her in the head. It didn't kill her somehow, amazingly. And when she was found by one of the men, he let her go. He did not let her go because he had a good heart. He told her it was because he had had his fill of killing that day.
Yeah.
Another woman, in particular, her name is Jane. She went through just the most horrific thing and graduated through this program so incredibly strong. She came from an area that had never experienced war. Everything was peaceful before. She didn't even know what rape was.
Yeah.
There wasn't a word for it. She was attacked while sleeping at her uncle's house. Rebels took them into the forest. They cut off her uncle's genitals, his arms, his legs. Then they pierced his eyes out and tied him to a tree to bleed out and die, which is of horror movies.
Who comes up with this stuff?
I know.
I think they just become so hardened that they're looking for new things to do and torture. And I don't understand that depraved side of humanity. We see it more than we should.
Because they're not human anymore.
They're not. They become monsters.
They are monsters. They then gang raped Jane, and when they were done, they tied her to a tree below her uncle. She wasn't the only one this was done to. Others were tied to trees as well. And she was tied to that tree for weeks. Other soldiers eventually found her. These were who she called good soldiers. Others around her were dead. She found out that she was pregnant. And at 7 months pregnant, rebels found her again. They hit her in the stomach with the blunt side of a machete. which caused her water to break. And they helped deliver her baby, which was, it's just fucking morbid to like have to be in that situation for these men who were part of why you're in this position to then help you give birth. But the baby was already dead when it came out. The baby had been dead inside her for some time. She described it as being decayed when it came out. And when she gave birth, her pelvic bone broke in the process and she wasn't able to walk. And she got very, very sick, septic. There were still remains of the deceased baby inside her. And when she got so bad that she smelled, she said that you could smell it from her mouth, from just she was dying. And neighbors helped her, carried her to a helicopter somehow that was in the area and got her to the hospital. And she was there at the hospital for 7 years. She had multiple surgeries. And after all that, you can imagine she's broken. She's very broken. She has been through so much. She was at her lowest point and she heard about the City of Joy and she went there. And the City of Joy gave her back her life. She is one of the most inspirational people, like in the documentary, if you watch it. And that's the thing. These women are worth that because it's more than just the violence. It's all these people who have experienced all of this. They have to rebuild. City of Joy has graduated 2,158 women leaders since it opened in 2011. And they are such beautiful, strong, brave women. They are real people. They matter. They're victims, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Survivors need access to resources like this that can help them heal, help them move forward beyond the horror, because it
is horrific. Everything.
Horrific. Many of these women, like I mentioned before, to heal physically require surgical procedures to recover from just the most absolutely unreal sexual assaults. And that's where Dr. Dennis Mukwege comes in. He is God sent. He is an exceptional man. He is very compassionate, very empathetic. His work has brought international attention to the issue of sexual violence in conflict zones, particularly in the DRC. He founded Pansy Hospital in Bukavu in 1999, which has treated over 50,000 survivors of sexual violence. He is a world-leading expert in treating internal injuries suffered by women subjected to gang rape and extreme sexual violence. He developed a holistic healing model that integrates psychological support, legal assistance, and socioeconomic support with medical treatment. He campaigns globally to end the use of rape as a weapon of war and advocates for the protection of women and for bringing those responsible for sexual violence to justice. Because that's another big thing here. Where is the justice?
There's none for most of these women right now.
Exactly.
And I remember in the documentary, like this doctor has had, threats on his life and against his family and, those who are trying to help. It's dangerous to even help because these groups come after you.
Exactly. There was an assassination attempt on his life and his daughters were taken hostage. And so he fled, he had to flee the country. And when he was away, all of the women came together to make money to purchase a flight for him to come back. And when they did that, these are people with little means. They earn less than $1 a day. They all came together to buy this ticket. He didn't need it. He didn't need the money to do that. But it's the very fact that they did this to bring him back. He felt like he had no choice, like that is where they need him. Hundreds, 1,000, maybe more were at the airport to welcome his arrival.
It's a really sweet moment.
Documentary. He's a beloved man. And we need more people like that out there
we
helping.
Need thousands of him.
I know. It just sucks how dangerous it is. This documentary was done in 2018, but he lived at the hospital and it was just the Hospital City of Joy. That's all he could do. But he has made that sacrifice to support these women. Because like we said, there's 500,000 women raped every year.
And not only do you have to have the skills, like he's a doctor, but you have to have the means to set up like hospitals and spaces for people to come. And there's just not enough people
advocating
of means doing that.
That's true.
And I guess it would have to somewhat come from outside of the country too. Like we have plenty of rich people in the world that could contribute to these doctors and training them and getting them set up with hospitals and things like that within the country. And it's just not being done.
It takes a rich person or a rich company to want to do good and not be part of the exploitation.
Just make more money to make more money to do what? To buy more yachts? Fucking Jeff Bezos.
I know. So he's just an example. There are a lot of people that want to help, but we need to be able to support those people.
Yes.
All of the challenges we have mentioned today have created a complex crisis that the Congolese government must navigate while also addressing other national issues such as economic development and political reforms. These ongoing conflicts threaten to destabilize not just the eastern regions, but the entire country's political landscape. So as much as we are sitting here advocating for Eastern Congo, it's the entire country. Yeah. These rebel groups have to be stopped.
They're just going to keep spreading like cancer.
International humanitarian organizations need to receive proper funding. Last year, there was a 2023 humanitarian response plan aimed to deliver assistance to 10 million people in the DRC, but the plan only received 40% funding. There's no reason why it should be 40%.
No.
Collectively, internationally,
we have the money.
We have the money and we could do more.
Enough. I just get so angry when there's so many problems that can be solved by money that is available.
I know.
And it's being hoarded by so many people, and we look up to those people. I don't, but some people in society do.
I know.
And it's like, you can do so much. You've got billions of dollars. How do you sleep at night?
Because they're probably secretly involved in this.
Of course, they're making money off of it.
In one way or another, they have something in their life that depends on the exploitation of other people.
We do.
I know.
Us sitting here, it's making me feel like I'm part of the problem too.
And there are things that we can individually do.
Yes.
And we're trying to do that right now. People, companies, countries need to be held accountable. And I know that they do investigate some of these crimes, but it's not done quick enough. People get away with it. Actual people aren't typically named in it.
Yeah,
it's not done the way that it needs to happen. This also includes the government itself of Congo. Like, just recently, they set up a post near a displacement camp, which put the camp in the line of fire.
Oh my God.
People are dying every day from deployed artillery. At this point, we don't know if it's from the rebel groups or the country itself. It sucks, but it requires the international community stepping forward. It's complex. I know this. Like, it seems impossible for conditions to improve, but things will change when everyone in the world knows.
Yes.
And they cannot keep it up if we know, and it continues to be pushed out there.
Mm-hmm.
The more you talk about it. I know it's scary to think about. There's too many players, how can we effectively do this? But we have to believe in a future. Maybe that's what it requires. It's just positive thinking. I don't know. We talk about energy. We have to believe in a future where the richest country in the world also has unlimited opportunities for its people. We have to believe that there is a future for a peaceful Congo where they have the ability to grow as individuals, go to school, have jobs, start businesses.
Just live a nice life.
Just live a nice life.
What everyone should have. Like, we are a fucked up species that we can't just live and let live.
I know.
Like, there's always this exploitation, and it's been there since the dawn of time. But we do have to believe in a bigger future and a better future. And we can make small decisions, because now that I know this, I'm going to think twice about some of the things I might purchase.
Exactly.
Our consumer mindset needs to change.
Yep.
Because in the U.S., we contribute quite heavily to it because we are the main consumer nation.
But there are things to do about that, like buy refurbished phones, laptops, whatever. I just came upon one because I was thinking about a phone for my daughter. Don't judge me. There's a reason why my 10-year-old might need a phone.
Right.
Personal stuff. But I came upon blackmarket.com. I haven't looked into them 100%, but everyone seems to love it. Like, everything seems brand new, but they're all refurbished.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cheaper. Like, you don't need the brand new thing every time.
You don't need the $1,800 phone. My boyfriend, his son broke his phone, and he did the same thing. He bought it through a secondhand marketplace. And it's like, 3 generations ago for like a couple $100.
Exactly. It's way cheaper.
And the fact that we know what is in our phones is coming at the price of human lives. We should not be so callous to just throw it away because we want a new, I don't know what's on the new iPhone, a new camera button. Who fucking cares? Is that really going to change your life to go spend $1,800 to get a new camera button? No. The camera's not going to be that much better. I've been caught up in that cycle before. I work for a company that is very entwined in the whole cell phone business. So,
it's frustrating. But it took me hearing and it might be someone who I'm going to talk about here in just a second who said this. I'm trying to remember exactly where I heard this from, but when it was said, you can't unhear it. One iPhone is the cost of one Congolese child.
Yeah.
And that's the truth.
The truth. And how many iPhones are out in the world?
You go get a new iPhone, that's going to be that child's life, that woman's life. It's scary because that's the connection here. It's something shiny and new for you, but someone died for you to have that. And someone was raped brutally for you to have that.
And you lose joy from buying something new so quickly.
I know.
That's why I spend all my money traveling and all of that and the experience. And don't even get me started. This may be a future episode on the garment industry and clothes and how horrible that is.
I know.
That's probably another area because people are exploited to make our fast fashion as well. And it's like, we don't get that much enjoyment from these stupid things we buy.
No.
A phone is kind of a part of our life. We need, unfortunately, in modern society in America.
Unfortunately, even just for safety.
For safety for our kids.
Everything.
Like I said, even if you work at a fast food place, you need the app to be able to log in now. Like all of that shit. But we don't need a brand new one every year.
No.
We need to get out of that mindset. And I'm guilty of it. I'm just as guilty as everyone. I'm trying to be more mindful about what I purchase because it is so easy to just
not think
feel
about
like you need new things.
And then, you want to forgive yourself. You're like, well, I'm just one person, so it's not going to do that. But everybody is just one person.
And if we
it
all
adds
stopped.
up, it adds up. So how can you help other than this? First, spread the word.
Yes. That's the other thing. It's an uncomfortable conversation because you feel like the Debbie Downer. I think me and Jessica feel like the Debbie Downer way too much now because of our podcast and we know too much. And I've had it told to me. It's like, okay, yeah, let's not talk about that. Let's, focus on the frivolous, Love is Blind is out right now.
That's what I'm saying. I don't want to talk about that all the time.
But it's so hard not to once you are awakened to all this shit going on. How do you just...
You can't turn it off. Because that is your humanity.
Yes. And we've been taught to turn our humanity off.
And once you turn it on, it's there.
Yeah.
You can't unhear, you can't unsee.
And you think about everything in a different light.
You do. So I would say outside of refurbishing, hold on to it as long as you can. Support organizations that are actually helping the people. There are a lot of organizations in Africa. There's organizations like Go Volunteer Africa. There's humanitarian organizations like the International Rescue Committee, UNHCR, or local NGOs that are working in the DRC. You can contact government representatives to advocate for increased humanitarian aid and diplomatic efforts to address the conflict. You can support policies that promote peace, human rights, sustainable development in the region. Or you can look for local organizations in your area that support Congolese refugees.
Okay.
Just keep yourself updated on the situation. Like we just said, it's the Debbie Downer. You don't want to see it every day, but keeping yourself updated will keep you
connected to it.
Yes. And if you want to know about a very specific group, Focus Congo is a really good place to start. And I suggest donating to them. They're an amazing organization, and they're one of the only ones actually on the ground in these camps helping to build shelters. They offer emergency assistance and medical care, including treatment for survivors of sexual violence. They distribute food, basic necessities, access to clean water. They educate the children. I'm going to link them in the show notes. And this is an organization that was created from people who experienced some of this. So they're very close to the purpose of what they're doing, and they're there. Some of these other organizations aren't physically there. So if you want to support something that you know is going to make it to the people, they're a place to start.
Okay.
Just do what you can. Talk about it. Raise awareness. Just stand up for your fellow human being. Speak on their behalf.
Yeah.
I want to end by playing some audio for you. It is a poem written and performed by Ntumba Yvette. She is from the Congo, but was able to get to Canada. She's young, beautiful, and brave, and fights for the people who are still there, who include many of her family members, her father, her siblings, extended family members. And what she has to say is very powerful. Please listen. Find her online and support her. She is on social media as well.
Yesterday, in my village, the sweet melodies of birds saturated our atmosphere. The trees danced to the rhythmic drums of the wind. The fertile lands competed to cure our sicknesses. Yesterday, in my village, engaging with a young man. Yesterday, in my village, beneath the blazing African sun, women gathered by the riverside, baptizing their children in the flowing waters, ensuring a spotless bath. Yesterday, in my village, the eyes of our ancestors gazed upon us like the stars, radiating the path for our noble warriors searching for prey, casting a gentle glow, watching over the young men searching for firewood. Yesterday, in my village, our history was our pride. We wore it on our chest like a military badge. We hid it in the chambers of our hearts like an elephant holds onto a grudge. We took canopy under the moonlight, gathered around the campfires to hear Bibi and Babu tell it. One time in my village, a thick, oppressive smoke suffocated the almost fear. A mighty, destructive wildfire engulfed our village. An echoing cry of women and children overshadowed the sweet melodies of birds. One time in my village, a multitude of soldiers descended like a tornado, leaving a hurricane of tears and a river of blood. Men bound to trucks, their hands amputated, children's laughter silenced in caves to be taken to a human zoo. A faint whisper of young maidens pleading for their bodies. Women drowned in sorrow, mourning their children. My ancestors' legacy looted to be taken to a strange land. One time in my village, under the cloak of a new moon, our families embarked on a journey of no end. Each step in the muddy, bloody road marked a painful shedding of our cherished identity, a heart-wrenching farewell to the life our ancestors bestowed upon us. Under every tree and inside every home, the bodies of my people laid in unmarked graves. Today, in my village, in search of refuge, we've become desperate asylum seekers, ruthlessly uprooting our roots from the soil of home, leaving behind our families, cultures, and languages for a land unknown. The bravest among us embark on a dangerous journey through the ocean. Others are trafficked into slavery through adoption and employment overseas. The rest of us are stuck in refugee camps, waiting for a handout ticket. Others have surrendered to deathless demand and joined our ancestors. Today in my village, my people pick up new identities like a champion collects trophies. They undergo surgeries to eliminate the African feature. They bleach their skin to wash off their blackness. My people are sold to the highest bidder. Today, in my village, the herbal strong scent of famine. The rivers, the once quenched our thirst, now lie polluted, leaving us trekking miles for water. The land that once supported our homes now lie open because someone discovered minerals. The children that once played under the mango trees are now stuck working in mining caves. Today, in my home, the lifespan of a smartphone equals the lifespan of an African child working in the mining caves. Every new release in September is a recruitment of a Congolese child into child labor. Every new galaxy is a ticket for a child working in the mines to join their ancestors. Your cars may not run on gas, but they sure do run on the blood of the Congolese children. Tomorrow, in my village, our children will once again play under the comforting shade of the mango trees. The young maidens will once again sit on the veranda and tell tales of survival. Women will once again go down to the river to bath their children. Tomorrow, in my village, like Ghana's year of return, our artifacts and the ashes of my ancestors will return home. My people will no longer be refugees in foreign lands. Like the baobab tree, our roots will grow on new soil. Like Mali, we will nationalize our gold. Like Burkina Faso, we will take control of our minds. Like Niger, we will control our uranium. Tomorrow, in my village, my people will write our own history. A history of survival, a history of dignity, a history of resilience. Tomorrow, in my village, the birds will once again saturate the atmosphere. Tomorrow, in my village.
I know some of that was probably difficult, not just to listen to, but to hear, because she did perform that live. There was a lot of background noise, but hopefully you heard what she had to say. They're just people who were just trying to live, and they're being pillaged and murdered for resources, and they deserve to play under the mango tree and to wash their children in the river without fear of death, and to be who they are and not have to take on new identities just to survive. Everybody has a right to life and to live peacefully, and it's just that simple. So please do your part. Listening is helping right now. That's the first step.
Be aware.
This was just a tiny overview of what is going on. This has been going on for a very long time, but look into it more, educate yourself, and thank you for allowing us to bring this to you.
Well, thank you for bringing this hard subject. I'm having a hard time talking about it right now. Just be aware and stay lucid.
Stay very lucid.
We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.